Crypto has been spending the last 4 years with one arm tied behind its back.
It seems like something has materially changed with the US elections or since then. So what is it? What is this something?
I think it's actually two things. Two fundamental things have changed. One is the other change, which I think is equally important, and obviously in the short term, maybe even more important, is that in terms of what will happen in a pro-crypto Congress, I'm really looking at three things. The first thing, which I think we could get in a matter of months, is...
Matt Hougan is a prominent figure in the cryptocurrency and ETF industries, currently serving as the Chief Investment Officer at Bitwise Asset Management.
With a rich background that includes leadership roles at Inside ETFs and ETF.com, Hougan is widely recognized as a leading expert on crypto, ETFs, and financial technology, and is known for his confident predictions about Bitcoin's future price potential.
Long-term Bitcoin investors are now saying $100,000 at a minimum before they're willing to sell.
A lot of people have been asking me in the last few days, like, where will the marginal bid for BTC come from? Who's buying at these prices?
The first thing is I think people are missing something important in the current market move, which is
Hello, Matt. I'm honored to have you on the podcast. Really cool to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yes, for sure. No, I've been following you for quite some time as well. You've been quite vocal on crypto and all things, on X, just really good takes that I've been enjoying myself. So maybe if you could quickly introduce yourselves to the audience, that would certainly help.
Sure. Awesome. And yeah, really excited to be here. So Matt Hougan, I'm the Chief Investment Officer at Bitwise Asset Management. Bitwise is a global crypto asset manager with $6+ billion in assets under management across ETFs in the US and Europe, as well as private funds, hedge funds, etc. I've been at Bitwise since early 2018. I think the price of Bitcoin's up 10x since I joined, which is fun. And before Bitwise, I spent more than a decade in the ETF industry. I was the CEO of ETF.com, created the first ETF data and analytics system in the world, and built and grew that business. So this particular moment in the market where crypto and ETFs have collided is sort of a collision of my two parts of my career, and it's really fun to see.
Nice. Yeah, certainly interesting. Well, I didn't know the fact about ETF.com because I've been using it back in the day as well when I was still a financial journalist, going there to get my data and just some general overview. So interesting to finally met the mastermind behind it all, so to say.
I love to hear it. I still use it on a daily basis too. So I'm glad it's helpful for people.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I certainly want to talk about the ETFs for sure later on, maybe during the episode, but maybe to kick things off, it would be cool to pivot to this thing, which is on everybody's mind. And it's obviously still the US election, and especially the price, that has been ripping afterwards or ever since then. So my first question would be, it seems like something has materially changed with the US elections or since then. So, but what is it? What is this something?
Yeah, I think it's actually two things. So I love the framing. I think two fundamental things have changed. One is that it's really true from a regulatory, legislative, and rules-based process. Crypto has been spending the last 4 years with one arm tied behind its back. It's faced regulation by enforcement. It's faced frivolous lawsuits from regulators. It's faced a massive lack of regulatory clarity, which has slowed down development and kept large institutions from moving into the space. And there's a widespread perception that that's going to reverse course dramatically. I think in the US Congress, it's something like 270 pro-crypto Congress people from both sides of the aisle have been elected. So now there is a pro-crypto majority in Congress. Obviously in the White House, which controls things like the SEC and the OCC and various regulators, there is now a pro-crypto president. And so there's an expectation that the industry will have a firm regulatory footing to build and thrive on. And that's a major fundamental change. The other change, which I think is equally important, and obviously in the short term, maybe even more important, is that there's been a change in psychology. Look, crypto started as this niche alternative asset. It started as an asset where people had very mixed opinions. A lot of people were very negative on it. I think the perceived risk of being pro-crypto as an institutional investor has kept a lot of people out of the market. And I think that's been wiped away now almost completely. It started to be removed in January of this year when we got crypto ETFs that sort of put a stamp of approval on this space. But now we have the highest office in the land being objectively pro-crypto, talking about building a Bitcoin strategic reserve, talking about empowering the industry. I think that's going to allow a lot more people into the space. So from my big picture perspective, we're entering the golden age of crypto. We're going to finally see what crypto can really do when it's on a firm footing. And you're seeing that reflected in the price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So many interesting points here that I want to unpack now. Maybe first things first. I mean, the US election that you mentioned, one question that I would be having towards you is like, we've been hearing a lot that crypto has kind of moved the needle, the crypto industry, like a lot of crypto voters have been showing up and in some states even kind of, voting people out of office that have been considered like negative towards crypto. My question is, do you have any special insights into, is this actually true or is it hard to quantify as well? Or what's your take there?
I think it's very true. I think particularly at the congressional level, when you look at those races, the crypto PAC, the political action committee that raised money to donate to candidates and build messages, 48 out of the 48 candidates they supported won, which is an incredible track record. Now, there are two reasons for that. Crypto is a very popular issue. There are a lot of Americans who own crypto and therefore want it to succeed well. Also, they raised a lot of money. It became one of the largest political action committees. But you can look at something like the Senate race in Ohio. It's very hard in the U.S. to unseat a senator who has been in office for a number of years, particularly powerful senators who have senior positions in committees, because they control a lot of money. If you're in a state with a powerful senator, they're likely bringing a lot of money into your state. But if we look at Ohio, Sherrod Brown lost to Dan Moreno. That is a noted crypto advocate replacing probably the number 2 crypto skeptic in the Senate, even though Sherrod Brown was an entrenched incumbent with a senior position in the Democratic Party. That's an incredible result. And I think that sort of shows you that crypto really did move the needle and influence this election.
Yeah, I mean, it is very interesting to hear because after all, I mean, what's so interesting is like these different like things that come together here, For one, crypto is like really this grassroots movement, I would argue still, and then still, as you said, there's an asset involved that so many people hold. And it's just interesting if we project these things out into the future, into future elections, also what this could mean that nowadays you have a grassroots movement, which is not only a grassroots movement with a lot of people who then actually show up to vote, but you do have like an asset attached, which is kind of driving incentives, Because I think you said it as well. There were donations from the crypto community, from crypto companies. And I think other industries also do donate a lot of money in political cycles. But I mean, usually I wouldn't think that the banking industry or the oil industry would actually turn up that many voters in the end, and that's really what makes a difference here. So that's what I find so interesting and also going forward regarding future elections.
Yeah, I think that's very right. It's almost reflexive in that, to the extent that crypto becomes more powerful, this group of voters becomes more powerful. And I think you're going to see that. The other side of it, which I think the market is beginning to recognize, but immediately after the election they were skeptical of, is I think you're going to see the people who were elected take action on crypto early in the administration because they want to show that they listened and they want the support of this industry for the next election, right? We have, the next major election is only 2 years from now. Believe it or not, the political runway already has started for that. So I think you're going to see these elected politicians making good on their promises to crypto early in this administration. And that's going to further feed that loop.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe just to add on, the ones that have been turned down now, because they kind of lost on that ground, they're probably also going to reconsider and kind of, okay, crypto is here to stay. Maybe we have to reconsider our stance altogether, just also to not be left behind in future elections, right?
I think that's right. To at least be neutral. I mean, I really want to emphasize this. The crypto industry has faced an extraordinarily negative regulatory environment. It was difficult for crypto companies to get banking accounts under the previous administration, which is an incredible fact, right? We did face a record number of lawsuits. So even getting politicians from negative to neutral, just so this industry can stand on a fair footing, will be a massive gain. And I think we're going to get that and more. We're going to go from negative to positive, and I think it's going to be a game changer.
I see. Yeah, I mean, you also alluded to this fact that there will be a pro-crypto like Congress, and that's what I've been hearing for the past few days a lot. So my question, and also a question that I hear from some of my friends who are hitting me up, is like, yeah, we've been hearing this, but what does it actually mean? And also, why do we know that these people are actually positive? How do we assess this? Is there some sort of like polls out there, or is it just like subjectively how they have been behaving so far, and now they're just labeled crypto positive? So can we put any numbers to this, so to say?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I look at that, commentary from Fairshake, which is the political action committee behind crypto, noting that I think it's 269 congressmen in the House of Representatives are pro-crypto. Also, the Republican Party has pro-crypto elements written into their party platform, right? Their official statement. That's not guarantee that they'll follow through them exactly, but it is as close as you can get in the U.S. to a formal of an endorsement of a set of policies. So I think they will follow through. In terms of what will happen in a pro-crypto Congress, I'm really looking at three things. The first thing, which I think we could get, in a matter of months, is a stablecoin bill that brings stablecoins fully into the light, creates a regulatory framework for them to exist, allows them to penetrate the payments market. Even prior to this election, you had seen widespread bipartisan support for stablecoins, in part because they buy U.S. treasuries, and that's good for the U.S. government, right? So I think we're going to see a stablecoin bill, and I think that's going to push stablecoin assets from $160 billion to $1 trillion plus in a very short period of time. I think you'll see Wall Street firms like JP Morgan coming into this space. I think there's going to be a stablecoin explosion. The second thing you're going to see is you're going to see custody be allowed by the largest banks and brokers. Currently, the largest players in the U.S. financial ecosystem, the Bank of New York Mellon, JP Morgan, et cetera, it's very difficult for them to touch crypto in any way. They can't really custody it. They can't really trade it, at least not easily. That is easy to reverse. There is actually a bill that would have reversed that passed both houses of Congress last year, only to be vetoed by the White House. I expect that to happen in very short order. And then the last thing, the third thing, and this will take the longest time, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened in the first year, is a market structure bill. The U.S. has two main regulators, the SEC and the CFTC, which broadly cover securities and commodities. There's been a turf war over how crypto should be regulated, should be in this bucket or that bucket. And the lack of clarity has made it extraordinarily hard for this industry to move forward. I suspect we will get a market structure bill that provides clear rules of the road of how different crypto assets are classified and regulated. An important thing I would note about that is there's going to be a lot of crypto assets that face a harsh regulatory environment as a result of that. Many of the smaller assets, I think, will fall on the security side of that spectrum, and they'll face real challenges in the market. But the larger assets, which I do think will end up in either a digital asset or commodity bucket, will be unleashed. And Wall Street firms will feel comfortable building on those. Users will feel comfortable allocating to those. And I think, that portion will be a golden age. But to be sure, it's not going to be winners across the board. There'll be winners and losers, as there should be.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because I think that's what a lot of people within the industry have also been fearful of, like especially Bitcoiners who are generally quite skeptical of other crypto projects, so to say, but they have a valid point that sometimes they point out, hey, we can't just kind of now YOLO everything through because like the Trump administration is now pro crypto, because there are probably some maybe outright scams, and then also projects which are not decentralized enough to go through as a non-security. So this is certainly an important point, and it's great to hear that I think at least you and others also have this on their mind, and as I believe you think that the U.S. politicians as well. So that's a great point. Maybe one thing I would like to add to the second point, and that's also then a question that I want to pivot, because like I'm out of Switzerland, and here already we have been doing custody like as banks for quite some time, obviously, and that's where we kind of had a head start, even though Switzerland is not as important as the US, but this is exactly what's going to happen. What if the US now joins the game, like seriously, and banks can seriously do custody? I mean, the battle is just going to be intensified. And then obviously we see these more global competition going on, because everything that the US touches, it's probably going to be intensifying the battle. But then that's the question that I'm leading to, with this strategic Bitcoin reserve. That's also something that has been on everybody's mind lately, So maybe if you could quickly describe what this is, and then, how likely it is that something like this could be passed.
Yeah, it's incredible that we're talking about this in a serious manner, and that we could wake up any day and have a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. If you think about where we were 2 years ago when Sam Bankman-Fried was on the cover of every newspaper, to fast forward to today, it's just a reminder of how fast things can change. The idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve is that the U.S. should buy and hold a portion of the Bitcoin that exists in the world. Central banks, as an example, own a significant portion of gold that exists, maybe around 20% of that. There is this idea that we should hold a portion of the Bitcoin that's being advanced by senators like Senator Lummis in the U.S. I think there are probably two phases that you can think about this. The first, which I think is a done deal, is the U.S. hold a couple 100,000 Bitcoin that it seized as part of Silk Road way back in 2014. And I think you can feel relatively confident that the U.S. is not going to sell that. That's actually pretty important. One of the reasons I think we struggled to get above the $72,000 mark for most of this year is because there were all these unlocks of sold Bitcoin. We had the German government selling its Bitcoin stores, as an example. So I think those couple 100,000 Bitcoin are probably going to be set. But the idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve is actually to then go into the market and buy Bitcoin up until, some people have noted, 1 million Bitcoin as the target goal. Obviously, this would be a complete game changer for the Bitcoin market. It would also catalyze a sort of game theory run by other governments to build their own strategic Bitcoin reserves. I wouldn't be surprised if that's happening right now and is actually contributing to the price. And if you think about what it would take for governments around the world to own 20% of the Bitcoin market, that is a lot of buying and a lot of upward pressure. Again, this is not a guarantee by any means, but it is within the realm of discussion in the U.S. It's being taken very seriously, and it's being considered at the highest levels.
Yeah, and it is probably more probable now that we have Trump and this pro-crypto administration, But maybe before it was just like this fancy thought experiment that it's easy, it's nice to think about, but now it could actually be on the table, and that's what's so interesting about it, I guess, right?
That's exactly right. Among other effects on the market, I think it makes the Bitcoin market extremely hard for people to short, because you could wake up any morning and have this announced, and you really don't want to be on the other side of that trade. So yes, it's gone from a crazy idea, an academic paper thought on the fringes of crypto, into something that's literally being discussed in the U.S. Congress. I mean, that is an incredible journey. And maybe we will get there, maybe we won't. I think we're probably biased on the side of it's probably going to happen to some degree, which is an absolutely incredible fact. Talks about where this industry is going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Great point about the shorting. That's an interesting thought I didn't have so far. But I mean, one thing that I maybe want to bring up here, and I don't want to be too skeptical, but you always within the crypto sphere also the naysayers, who already kind of project this out, and then they're like, okay, what could be the potential risks if something like this actually were to be implemented, And then some people point to the fact that, like, if the US government were to buy Bitcoin, obviously you had all these second order effects with other countries maybe needing to follow suit. But then it could also kind of send this signal of the US government is buying Bitcoin, and is this kind of them turning their back towards their own debt instrument, debt securities. Like, couldn't it be kind of also fragile to the financial system, at which point then Trump would maybe have to walk it all back and, rug pull the entire industry by selling all the Bitcoin, and this could just lead to a total price collapse, and then we would fall into a deep bear market for several years. Do you see any of that as realistic, or is it just not really?
No, I think it's reasonable to consider, right? It's reasonable to consider that it's extraordinarily important to the U.S. to remain as the world's reserve currency. And that's something that politicians value at a very high degree. And it's something that supports our debt-driven economy. It's almost a necessity for the U.S. The loss of that status would be a significant crisis in the U.S. So I think it's reasonable to be thinking about that. The challenge from a nation state perspective is that Bitcoin is a global game. So that if we get to the point where Bitcoin has reached that level of authority and importance, it would be extremely difficult to back out of that system unless you were in such a dominant economic position that you could do that and pull the whole world with you. Otherwise, they will go the other way. And I think that sort of global game theory reduces that risk to a very substantial degree. Again, just to summarize again, if Bitcoin were so important that that was a concern, how could you back out of the system, right? How could you do that? It would be very, very hard. So I think that's a protection. Look, I think there are things to worry about. If the US owned too much Bitcoin from a government perspective, or if BlackRock owns too much Bitcoin, they can start to exert economic pressure on the protocol, right? Not hands-on pressure, but economic pressure. That's a very real risk, something we have to be aware of. You want Bitcoin ownership to be decentralized, to be global, to be broadly distributed. And so I think it's great if the US government owns 1 million Bitcoin. I think it'd be bad if they own 10. And, keeping an eye on that, I think, is something worth doing as an industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I mean, we don't want to be kind of doomsday sayer or something like this, but it's always, as you said, it's important to consider risks. At least that's what I like doing as well. But maybe shifting towards the positive again a little more. So my question would be, since you are really deep into the crypto ETF business as well, as you said, you work for Bitwise, who have one of the biggest ETFs out there, I would assume, or just one, which is also quite interesting because maybe you can say a few things about your product. I think you do have like some money that you chip in for developers of the protocol and stuff. So maybe you can elaborate, but I would just be more curious, like, what is your thought? Are we going to see way more crypto ETFs being approved anytime soon?
Yes is the answer. I mean, specific to our Bitcoin ETF, thank you for asking. BITB here in the US, it does donate 10% of its gross profit to Bitcoin open source developers, split between multiple foundations as a hands-off grant, which I think is important. It's the only, I believe, maybe one of the only Bitcoin ETFs that publish its Bitcoin addresses, so you can verify that the ETF has the Bitcoin that it says it has. You can do that straight from our website, and it's among the cheapest ETFs. So we're very proud of BITB and what we've done in that space, being a crypto native ETF issuer that's holding its own with BlackRock, Fidelity, and these other Wall Street giants. I think it's important for the crypto industry that there be crypto native asset managers that are scalable businesses, and we're happy to be one of those. As far as will we see more ETPs, I think the answer is yes. So first, I think what you'll see is people trying to iterate on the existing ETP structure. Remember, there are things that these ETPs don't do that others do. In-kind creations and redemptions, which are possible in Europe for sure, are not possible in the US in an ETF structure. And I'm hopeful that we can see progress on that, at least people working on that. If you turn to, other assets, there's no staking on US ETPs. So I think, there's hope that we can have dialogue with the regulators on improving the existing products even more. And then will we get other assets? I think the answer is, it's a much better regulatory setting to explore those areas than we had a month ago, right? If you look in Switzerland, you have a wide array of crypto ETPs on a wide array of assets that have reduced costs and raised security for people looking to access those markets. That's just a net win for society. Here in the US, we have Bitcoin and ETH, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to expand that, but it could take some time, right? These are complex products, complex markets, and it could take some time.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to come back to this point regarding staking, because that's something I've been grappling with as well, especially as you said, Ethereum ETFs, they don't have this staking component as of now in the US. And that's also why a lot of people have been arguing it makes it not that appealing to investors. So is this also something that could be reconsidered and maybe rolled back, as a sort of change that could come? And is technically, is this how would this work? Would you need to launch a new ETF? Could you just put change or have these changes be implemented with the ones that are already out there, or how would that go about?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's probably worth noting the two reasons we don't have staking from my point of view today. The first, to give the regulators the benefit of the doubt, is that US regulators tend to crawl, walk, run. And a ETF that stakes is more complex than an ETF that doesn't stake. So again, from a sort of, regulatory point of view, let's prove out that the non-staking ETP works before we consider something more complex. I actually think that's completely reasonable, completely fine. The other reason why we haven't seen staking in the US is that there's some debate in the regulatory circles around how staking influences the security status of something like Ethereum. And that's another example of where there is a lack of regulatory clarity. If we get regulatory clarity, if we get market structure bills, if we get more positive interpretations, then that would open up that potential. And we can already see in Europe that you can have ETPs that stake. In terms of whether you would have to launch a new ETP or you could convert or expand the existing ETP, that's a pretty complex legal question, and I don't think there are clear answers to that. But we will see that over time if we get the kind of regulatory clarity that opens up that window, which I'm hopeful we will get.
Okay, I see. Yeah, great answer. Well, one question that I would like to ask is also one that I've been asked myself a lot. Last time I checked, I think Bitcoin was at 85K or something. So it's already running like crazy. And so a lot of people have been asking me in the last few days, where will the marginal bid for BTC come from? Who's buying at these prices? And maybe you have some special insight here as well, given that you have an ETF out there and you're also probably talking to institutional investors. Yeah, where is it coming from? What do you think? And also going forward, will there be enough demand, so to say? That's probably what people want to allude to.
Yeah, great question. The first thing is I think people are missing something important in the current market move, which is they're assuming it's all net new demand from people who saw the election and want to own more Bitcoin. I think for this short-term window, an equal and maybe more important piece is a vanishing of sellers. If you think of long-term Bitcoin investors who were previously willing to sell at all-time highs, or people who were willing to short this market because it had been trading in a range, those have been blown out. Long-term Bitcoin investors are now saying $100,000 at a minimum before they're willing to sell. And shorts, as I mentioned, are terrified of waking up and finding the US has a Bitcoin strategic reserve and the price has printed a God candle. So I think one of the reasons we're up so much is that we've removed a lot of sellers from the market, at least from 75K to 100K, where I think there'll be some seller activity. The marginal demand, I do think there's an excited retail base. You can see that in the app downloads. You can see that in the Google search trend. Make no mistake, retail is still an important part of the crypto market. But there has also been a game change from the institutional perspective. We're on the road. I've been on the road every week for the past 4 weeks, talking to financial advisors, family offices, hedge funds, and indeed institutions. And there is just, even before the election, they had really turned a page on Bitcoin. They've gone from let's understand this to let's understand where it fits in a portfolio. I think we're at sort of the exponential part of the institutional adoption curve. And when you ask, like, how long can it go on? A very long time. If you look at U.S. stocks, the Russell 3000 index, which is like a broad-based index of U.S. stocks, it's 71% owned by institutions. If you look at Bitcoin, I would guess it's 5 to 10% owned by institutions. There's another 60 percentage points before we get on par with stocks. I think we're still very early in that. This is going to be a multi-year catch up by institutions, building positions in this space.
Yeah, exactly. It's just sometimes if you see these numbers, I had this number brought to me to my attention just recently that like BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF just passed like the AUM of its gold ETF, and then people like, wow, gold, that's crazy. It's been in the market for so long. It must be crazy that there's already so much demand. Is there any left? But then at the same time, as you said, it's probably a multi-year catch up that's unrolling here because like there's still so much left and it's not in that many people's portfolio yet. It's just not BTC, and then that's the interesting thing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that's right.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, on X, when I'm following you, you're also, at least that's what I can tell, you're really commingling with the institutional investors. That's also the guys that you're appealing to. And so I'm wondering, what's the general vibe among these? And especially like we've seen in the US, which I was also quite surprised. And I think many people were surprised by this. We saw the state pension fund of Michigan and Wisconsin, they were invested or are invested now in Bitcoin. I mean, this is something at least here also in Switzerland that we've been trying to do for years, orange pill these pension funds and like the guys with the real big pockets of money as well. So is this going to continue as well? Or what are you seeing on the front line, so to say, or in the trenches?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been at dinners, we've been at events, we've been doing one-on-one meetings. I think the overwhelming thing I've heard is people saying that they have to get off zero, that they've been studying this space for 2 or 3 years. In many cases, this is the 4th, 5th, or 6th meeting that we're having with a potential client, and they now feel the urgency to gain an allocation to the space. They also, notably, that's removal of that reputational risk, I think is a really big deal. When you think about an institutional investor, someone that is on an investment committee at an endowment or a family office, I hate to be, crude about it, but their number one goal is not to lose their job. These are very good jobs. They're highly compensated. They're highly sought after. They're hard to get. They don't want to stick their neck out and do something that would cost them their job. And for a long time, being pro-crypto raised that risk exponentially. The U.S. government was anti-crypto. The SEC was anti-crypto. There were no ETPs. Now you can evaluate it on a fair basis. Now you can look at it like any other asset. And as you know, if you look at Bitcoin compared to other assets, it's just a phenomenal thing to add to a portfolio. It has high returns historically. It has low correlations to other assets. It's liquid. It's like a golden trifecta for asset allocators. And as a result, we're seeing them start to move. Now, this takes time, right? Investment committees meet quarterly. They probably want to talk about it once, twice, or 3 times. Again, I don't think we've seen most of those institutions move in over the last week. I think it's going to happen in Q1, in Q2, in Q3. I think it's going to be a building trend, but you are seeing it. Every time an endowment comes out as having allocated to crypto, every time Emory University reveals that it owns Ethereum, or as you mentioned, these state pensions revealed that they own Bitcoin. that makes it easier for the next pension to do so. And we're still very early in that journey, but it's moving at an accelerating rate.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. But then what do you think would be the effect in terms of market structure, because like a lot of people are like, okay, we're going to see this hype phase now again, at some point this blow off top, and then we're going to enter like a deep bear market again, because that's always how it has been. But if I'm hearing this correctly or I'm telling or trying to interpret what you say correctly, it's like if we have this bit under Bitcoin because of these institutions, then maybe these downtrends, they might just be shallower and maybe not as long. And we could be seeing this actually play out in reality. Is this something that you think could be the case?
Yeah, I don't think we've ended the economic cycle. So I think there will still be moments where we're overhyped and overlevered and moments of significant pullbacks. That's been true in the traditional economy for 1,000 years. It's been driving the Bitcoin and crypto economy since Bitcoin launched. And for sure, we're going to go through that phase. But I do think the pullback will be shallower and it will be faster. If you think about the previous pullbacks, 2018, 2022, those were 70+% pullbacks. And at the bottom of those pullbacks, you had people wondering if crypto would exist. You had media stories about the end of Bitcoin. That's off the table, right? There are no more Bitcoin is going to zero stories. And there are now people who will wait and buy into those dips. But could we see, 40% pullbacks in the future? Of course we could. This is an extremely volatile asset, right? Think about how much it's up over the last couple of weeks. That, of course, we can go down. So I think they've been truncated and reduced in depth, but they haven't been removed. We'll still see booms and busts, as we do in every.
Yeah, sure. No, that's sure. That's for sure. It's just interesting to fantasize about these things, how they could be changing market structures. As you said, that if you at some point believe, and more people believe that this asset is not going, or this industry as a whole is not going away anymore, then this obviously also changes market psychology. And I think you can also feel it right now, at least on X. I feel like even though Bitcoin is like at all-time highs, a lot of my friends who have been in the space for quite some time, they're really like indifferent to it because like they have also now been conditioned and maybe brainwashed enough to kind of believe, Bitcoin is going to reach an all-time high always again, we just don't worry anymore. And this is also something, these changes that you can see at the margin, which is just kind of interesting how it like kind of instilled or ingrained in people's heads. And I think this does something to market psychology for sure.
I think that's right. I'll throw out one more thing to watch out for from a regulatory perspective that I think could change market structure, which probably isn't being talked about enough. But a big driver of investment in the U.S. is retirement savings by individuals in 401k plans, where people take a portion of their paycheck every month and just plow it into the equity market. A lot of people think this has driven equity valuations up substantially over the last 20 years because there is just a persistent bid from people who are working into these investments. The Department of Labor came out in 2022 in the U.S. and effectively made that not illegal, but very frowned on. They issued a stark warning telling 401k providers not to offer crypto in their portfolios. If that gets walked back and we start to tap into retirement assets, that does create like a real persistent monthly bid for this asset. So that is something to watch in the coming year.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. I mean, that's one of the biggest difference probably between crypto and just normal equity, and stocks, because they have something like this already, with a lot of, like pensions and all these like saving accounts that plowing in money and crypto doesn't have this yet. But this, well said, this could exactly change things as well. Yeah, maybe one last question on the crypto side, or like in general for this episode. Like I read that you guys are currently writing on your prediction for 2025, and obviously you probably don't want to let the entire cat out of the bag, but maybe you can give us or the audience a sneak peek into maybe one of the boldest predictions that you guys have for 2025.
Oh man, you're putting us on the spot. Yeah, we did pretty well in 2024. We predicted poly market would be really significant. We predicted Bitcoin going to $80,000. We predicted a number going really high. I'll just hint it to, which I've already hinted at. Yeah, look, we think the price of crypto is going up substantially. I think we're still early in this market. We may be early until Bitcoin is $250,000 or $500,000 or even $1 million before it starts getting late. What that means for a 2025 price prediction, you'll have to wait. But I do think we're in the exponential part of the institutional adoption curve, and so I'm really excited about the year ahead. And the other one I would look at, I've previously said that I think stablecoins are going to have exponential growth next year. Again, they're about $160 billion now. We're thinking about what that number looks like at the end of 2025. And I think it could be really substantial. I think people underestimate that market. And of course, that accrues value into ETH. It accrues value into DeFi. It accrues value into other spaces in the crypto market. So look at Bitcoin price and stable coins. The predictions will both be up, but you'll have to wait for the specifics when we release the report.
Nice. Where can people go to read the report once it's out?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be all over Twitter, but you could find it at bitwiseinvestments.com or, track me on Twitter, Matt_Hougan, which is Hougan. And we'll publish it there as well.
Nice. I'm definitely looking forward to reading this. So, Matt, thanks a lot for all the great insights. That was very nice and just really enjoyed it. So maybe my last question that I ask to every person that I have on the show is since my podcast is called Less Noise, More Signal. So can you point me to any other high signal person, that you think, we should definitely be talking to?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. There are so many out there that are so good. Let me send you a few names after the fact. I'll give you a few names for sure. My mind is on Bitwise people. I want to give you non-Bitwise people, but there are a lot of great folks that I follow. I'll shoot them over to you.
Sure. No, that's great. Cool. Matt, thanks a lot for your time. Have a great one and enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.